Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, where we're taking a little journey through the history of the universe back to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, back to the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan. Welcome aboard out there in cyberspace, all of you, and welcome to everyone in the room. I've got a room full of sincere seekers for the truth. So wonderful, and this is the goal of life, to hear in the association of Vaishnavas the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Okay, Sanatana Goswami has glorified the Bhagavatam in this way, in his Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Stotram, which is a part of the Sri Krishna Leela Stava. And it goes like this: Sarva Shastabdipi Yusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalitwan Doditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvaseyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nistadaka Madbhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhu tadayin ati nicho chatakara hanamunchagadachin mam premnaret katayosura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So here we are, 5th canto, 10th chapter of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. We're following the life, or the lives of Bharata Maharaj, who was the son of Rishabhadev, an incarnation of Krishna. And Bharata Maharaj was the oldest son of Rishabhadev, and he ended up being the emperor of the planet. And after his reign, the planet became known as Bharata Varsha. And to this day, on the Indian rupee and in other governmental logos, you will find Bharata Varsha, just like we have "In God You Trust" in the bills. So in India, they have Bharata Varsha. So this is another evidence. It's a mundane evidence, but it's an evidence that this is history. These things actually came to pass. So Bart, after his reign, when his sons grew up to take charge, he went to the forest and he became very advanced in devotional life, and to the point where he was exhibiting symptoms of bhava, the stage right next to love of God. But he was by himself, and by providence, he got attached to a little baby deer who was orphaned. And he got so attached to the deer that he became completely absorbed in thoughts of the deer and forgot his spiritual practices, and he ended up thinking of the deer when he left his body, and he took the body of a deer. But because he was so advanced in spiritual life, he could remember what happened. And so even as a baby deer, he went away from his family and went back to the place where he was when he left his body before, and he just chewed on leaves and waited to die, waited to pass away. And he's thinking still in his mind. And then he took the birth as Jadbharat. And this time, to make sure that he didn't get caught by Maya, he started acting like a dumb, deaf, and lame, not lame, but dumb and deaf person. And he couldn't be trained, and he was very strong physically, but he acted like he didn't know what to do, but he was inside, he was completely self-realized. So then, these palanquin carriers of a king, they needed somebody to help, and he was very strong, and they came across him, he was guarding a field or something, and they took him and made him palanquin carrier for Maharaja Rahugana. So, but the thing about him was, whenever he saw any ants on the ground, he would stop, and he'd wait till they went by, and then he would keep it going. So the palanquin was going like this all the time. And Maharaja Rahugana started to chastise the palanquin carriers, and he says, Lord, we're doing this right. This new man, he doesn't know what he's doing. He can't do it right. So then he started to chastise him, and as soon as he did, Jadbharat started to speak. And this is now, he's talking to Maharaj Rahugana in response to his chastisement. Text 21. This is Jadbharat speaking to Maharaj Rahugana. You have said, I am not fatigued from labor, although the soul is different from the body. There is fatigue. No, this is Maharaj Rahugana coming back to anyway, we'll figure out what it is. You have said, I am not fatigued from labor, although the soul is different from the body. There is fatigue because of bodily labor, and it appears to be the fatigue of the soul. When you are carrying the palanquin, this is Rahugana, when you are carrying the palanquin, there is certainly labor for the soul. This is my conjecture. You have also said that the external behavior exhibited between the master and the servant is not factual. But although in the phenomenal world it is not factual, the products of the phenomenal world can actually affect things. This is visible and experienced. As such, even though material activities are impermanent, they cannot be said to be untrue. So in this book, we learn everything, including all the arguments against theism, against spiritual life. This is called Purva Paksha in Sanskrit. It's the argument that is then answered by the saint. And this is part of the Purva Paksha of Rahugana Maharaj, who hasn't been able to understand so far what Jadbharat is saying. Purport. This is a discussion on impersonal Mayavad philosophy and the practical philosophy of Vaishnavas. The Mayavad philosophy explains this phenomenal world to be false, but Vaishnava philosophers do not agree. They know that the phenomenal world is a temporary manifestation, but it is not false. A dream that we see at night is certainly false, but a horrible dream certainly affects the person seeing it. The soul's fatigue is not factual, but as long as one is immersed in the illusory bodily conception, one is affected by such false dreams. When dreaming, it is not possible to avoid the actual facts, and the conditioned soul is forced to suffer due to his dream. A water pot is made of earth and is temporary. Actually, there is no water pot. There is simply earth. However, as long as the water pot can contain water, we can use it in that way. It cannot be said to be absolutely false. Text 22. King Rahugana continued, "My dear sir, you have said that designations like bodily fatness and thinness are not characteristics of the soul. That is incorrect, because designations like pain and pleasure are certainly felt by the soul. You may put a pot of milk and rice within fire, and the milk and rice are automatically heated, one after the other. Similarly, due to bodily pains and pleasures, the senses, mind, and soul are affected. The soul cannot be completely detached from this conditioning." Purport. This argument put forward by Maharaja Rahugana is correct from the practical point of view, but it arises from an attachment to the bodily conception. It can be said that a person sitting in his car is certainly different from his car, but if there is damage to the car, the owner of the car, being overly attached to the car, feels pain. Actually, the damage done to the car has nothing to do with the car's proprietor, but because the proprietor has identified himself with the interest of the car, he feels pleasure and pain connected with it. This conditional state can be avoided if attachment is withdrawn from the car. When the proprietor would not feel pleasure or pain if the car is damaged or whatever. Similarly, the soul has nothing to do with the body and the senses, but due to ignorance, he identifies himself with the body and he feels pleasure and pain due to bodily pleasure and pain. Text 23. My dear sir, you have said that the relationship between the king and the subject, or between the master and the servant, are not eternal. But although such relationships are temporary, when a person takes the position of a king, his duty is to rule the citizens and punish those who are disobedient to the laws. By punishing them, he teaches the citizens to obey the laws of the state. Again, you have said that punishing a person who is deaf and dumb is like chewing the chewed or grinding the pulp. That is to say, there is no benefit in it. However, if one is engaged in his own occupational duty, as ordered by the Supreme Lord, his sinful activities are certainly diminished. Therefore, if one is engaged in his occupational duty by force, he benefits because he can vanquish all his sinful activities in that way. Purport. This argument offered by Maharaj Rahugana is certainly very effective. In his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 124, Srila Rupa Goswami says, Tasmat kenapyupayena manak krishne niveshayet. Somehow or other, one should engage in Krishna consciousness. Actually, every living being is an eternal servant of Krishna, but due to forgetfulness, a living entity engages himself as an eternal servant of Maya. As long as one is engaged in Maya's service, he cannot be happy. Our Krishna consciousness movement aims at engaging people in Lord Krishna's service. That will help them become freed from all material contamination and sinful activity. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.10, Bhita Raga Bhaya Krodha. By becoming detached from material activities, we will be freed from fear and anger. By austerity, one becomes purified and eligible to return home, back to Godhead. The duty of the king is to rule his citizens in such a way that they can become Krishna conscious. This would be very beneficial for everyone. Unfortunately, the king or president engages people in sense gratification instead of the Lord's service, and such activities are certainly not beneficial for anyone. King Rahugana tried to engage Bharata in carrying the palanquin, which is a form of sense gratification for the king. However, if one is engaged as a palanquin carrier in the Lord's service, that is certainly beneficial. In this godless civilization, if a president engages people somehow or other in devotional service or the awakening of Krishna consciousness, he renders the very best service to the citizens. Text 24. Whatever you have spoken appears to me to be contradictory. O best friend of the distressed, I have committed a great offense by insulting you. I was puffed up with false prestige due to possessing the body of a king. For this I have certainly become an offender. Therefore I pray that you kindly glance at me with your causeless mercy. If you do so, I can be relieved from sinful activities brought about by insulting you. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that by offending a Vaishnava, one finishes all his spiritual activities. Offending a Vaishnava is considered the mad elephant offense. A mad elephant can destroy an entire garden which has been developed with great labor. One may attain the topmost platform of devotional service, but somehow or other, if he offends a Vaishnava, the whole structure collapses. Unconsciously, King Rahugana offended Bharata, but due to his good sense, he asked to be excused. This is the process by which one can be relieved from a Vaishnava aparad. Krishna is always very simple and by nature merciful. When one commits an offense at the feet of a Vaishnava, one must immediately apologize to such a person so that his spiritual advancement may not be hampered. Text 25. O my dear Lord, you are the friend of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the friend of all living entities. You are therefore equal to everyone, and you are free from the bodily conception. Although I have committed an offense by insulting you, I know that there is no loss or gain for you due to my insult. You are fixed in your determination, but I have committed an offense. Because of this, even though I may be as strong as Lord Shiva, I shall be vanquished without delay due to my offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. Purport. Maharaja Rahugana was very intelligent and conscious of the inauspicious effects arising from insulting a Vaishnava. He was therefore very anxious to be excused by Bharata. Following in the footsteps of Maharaja Rahugana, everyone should be very cautious not to commit an offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Madhyakanda 13:338 and 390 says, Shulapani Shama Yadi Bhakta Ninda Kore Bhagavata Pramana Tata Shigramare Hina Vishnavera Ninde Sarvagya Ai Sejanera Adak Pata Sarva Shastrikaye. Even if one is as strong as Lord Shiva, who carries a trident in his hand, one will nonetheless fall down from his spiritual position if he tries to insult a Vaishnava. That is the verdict of all Vedic scriptures. He also says this in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Madhyakanda 22:129, 22:55 and 50 through 56. Vaishnavara Ninda Karibeke Yaragana Tara Raksha Samarcha Nahika Kona Jana Shula Pani Sama Yadi Vaishnavara Ninde Tatabhiya Nashayaya Kahi Shastra Vinde Iha Na Maniya Ye Jana Sujana Nandikari Janme Janme Se Papishta Daivadoshi Mare. One who blasphemes a Vaishnava cannot be protected by anyone. Even if a person is as strong as Lord Shiva, if he blasphemes a Vaishnava, he is sure to be destroyed. This is the verdict of all scriptures. If one does not care for the verdict of the Shastras and dares blaspheme a Vaishnava, he suffers life after life because of this. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 5th canto, 10th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled The Discussion between Bharata and Maharaja Rahugana. And there we have the 25th act of the 10th. Okay. It's just another act in the drama of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And we're moving on to chapter 11. Bharata instructs King Rahugana. Now we're going to get the straight sauce. The Purva Paksha is going to be answered definitively. Hare Krishna. This is the summary of the chapter. In this chapter, the Brahmana Bharata instructs Maharaja Rahugana in detail. He tells the king, "You are not very experienced, yet you posed yourself as a learned person because you are very proud of your knowledge. Actually, a person who is on the transcendental platform does not care for social behavior that sacrifices spiritual advancement. Social behavior comes within the jurisdiction of karmakanda, material benefit. No one can spiritually advance by such activities. The conditioned soul is always overpowered by the modes of material nature, and consequently he is simply concerned with material benefits and auspicious and inauspicious material things. In other words, the mind, which is the leader of the senses, is absorbed in material activities, life after life. Thus he continuously gets different types of bodies and suffers miserable material conditions. On the basis of mental concoction, social behavior has been formulated. If one's mind is absorbed in these activities, he certainly remains conditioned within the material world. According to different opinions, there are 11 or 12 mental activities which can be transformed into hundreds and thousands. A person who is not Krishna conscious is subjected to all these material concoctions and is thus governed by the material energy. The living entity who is free from mental concoctions attains the platform of pure spirit soul, devoid of material contamination. There are two types of living entities, Jivatma and Paramatma, the individual soul and the Supreme Soul. That Supreme Soul, in his ultimate realization, is Lord Vasudeva, Krishna. He enters into everyone's hearts and controls the living entity in his different activities. He is therefore the supreme shelter of all living entities. One can understand the Supreme Soul and one's position in relationship with him when one is completely freed from the unwanted association of ordinary men. In this way, one can become fit to cross the ocean of nations. The cause of conditional life is attachment to the external energy. One has to conquer these mental concoctions. Unless one does so, he will never be freed from material anxieties. Although mental concoctions have no value, their influence is still very formidable. No one should neglect to control the mind. No one should neglect to control the mind. If one does, the mind becomes so powerful that one immediately forgets his real position. Forgetting that he is an eternal servant of Krishna, and that service to Krishna is his only business, one is doomed by material nature to serve the objects of the senses. One should kill mental concoctions by the sword of service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotee. Guru Krishna Prasadi Poi, Bhakti Lata Bij. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Text 1. The Brahmana Bharata said, "My dear king, although you are not at all experienced, you are trying to speak like a very experienced man. Consequently, you cannot be considered an experienced person. An experienced person does not speak the way you are speaking about the relationship between a master and a servant, or about material pains and pleasures. These are simply external activities. Any advanced, experienced man, considering the absolute truth, does not talk in this way. Purport. Krishna similarly chastised Arjuna. Ashochanam vishochas tvam priyavadang chabashase. While speaking learned words, you are lamenting for what is not worthy of grief. Bhagavad Gita 2:11. Similarly, among people in general, 99.9% try to talk like experienced advisors. But they are actually devoid of spiritual knowledge, and are therefore like inexperienced children, speaking nonsensically. Consequently, their words cannot be given any importance. One has to learn from Krishna or his devotee. If one speaks on the basis of this experience, that is, on the basis of spiritual knowledge, one's words are valuable. At the present moment, the entire world is full of foolish people. Bhagavad Gita describes these people as mudhas. They are trying to rule human society, but because they are devoid of spiritual knowledge, the entire world is in a chaotic condition. To be released from these miserable conditions, one has to become Krishna conscious and take lessons from an exalted personality like Bharata, Lord Krishna, and Kapiladev. That is the only way to solve the problems of material life. Text 2. My dear king talks of the relationship between the master and the servant, the king and the subject, and so forth, are simply talks about material activities. People interested in material activities, which are expounded in the Vedas, are intent on performing material sacrifices and placing faith in their material activities. For such people, spiritual advancement is definitely not manifest. Purport. In this verse, two words are significant: Vedavada and Tattvavada. According to Bhagavad Gita, those who are simply attached to the Vedas and who do not understand the purpose of the Vedas or the Vedanta Sutra are called Veda Vada Rata. Mami mam pushpitam bacham pravadanta vipaschitaha Veda Vada Ratak Parta Nanyat Astiti Vadinaha Kamatmana Swargapada Janma Karma Pala Pradam Kriya Vishesha Bahulam Bhogaishvaryam Gatim Prati. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification in opulent life, they say there is nothing more than this. Bhagavad Gita 2:42 and 43. The Vedavada followers of the Vedas are generally inclined to karmakanda, the performance of sacrifice according to the Vedic injunctions. They are thereby promoted to higher planetary systems. They generally practice the Chaturmasya system. Akshayam ha vai Chaturmasya yajina sukritam bhavati. One who performs the Chaturmasya yajna becomes pious. By becoming pious, one may be promoted to the higher planetary systems. Urdhvam gachanti satvasta. Some of the followers of the Vedas are attached to karmakanda, the fruitive activities of the Vedas, in order to be promoted to a higher standard of life. Others argue that this is not the purpose of the Vedas. Tad yatai veha karma jitak loka chiyate evam utra punya jitak loka chiyate. In this world, someone may be very highly elevated by taking birth in an aristocratic family, by being well educated, beautiful, or very rich. These are the gifts for pious activities enacted in the past life. However, these will be finished when the stock of pious activity is finished. If we become attached to pious activities, we may get these various worldly facilities in the next life and may take birth in the heavenly planets. But all this will eventually be finished. Chine punye martyalokam pishanti. Bhagavad Gita 9:21. When the stock of pious activity is finished, one again has to come to this martyaloka. According to the Vedic injunctions, the performance of pious activity is not really the objective of the Vedas. The objective of the Vedas is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Vidaish chisarvair aham eva vedya. The objective of the Vedas is to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those who are Vedavadis are not actually advanced in knowledge, and those who are followers of Jnanakanda, Brahman understanding, are also not perfect. However, when one comes to the platform of Upasana and accepts the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes perfect. Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnor Aradhanam param. In the Vedas, the worship of different demigods and the performance of sacrifice are certainly mentioned, but such worship is inferior because the worshippers do not know that the ultimate goal is Vishnu. Nate vidu swarta katim hi Vishnum. When one comes to the platform of Vishnu Aradhanam or Bhakti Yoga, one has attained the perfection of life. Otherwise, as indicated in Bhagavad Gita, one is not a Tattvavadi, but a Vedavadi, a blind follower of the Vedic injunctions. A Vedavadi cannot be purified from material contamination unless he becomes a Tattvavadi. That is, one who knows Tattva, the absolute truth. Tattva is also experienced in three features: Brahmiti, Paramatmiti, Bhagavan iti Shabdyate. Even after coming to the platform of understanding Tattva, one must worship Bhagavan, Vishnu and his expansions, or one is not yet perfect. Bahunam janmanam ante, jnanavan mam prapadyate. After many births, one who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto Krishna. The conclusion is that unintelligent men with the poor fund of knowledge cannot understand Bhagavan, Brahman, or Paramatma. But after studying the Vedas and attaining the understanding of the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is supposed to be on the platform of perfect knowledge. Text 3. A dream becomes automatically known to a person as false and immaterial. And similarly, one eventually realizes that material happiness in this life or the next, on this planet or a higher planet, is insignificant. When one realizes this, the Vedas, although an excellent source, are insufficient to bring about direct knowledge of the truth. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 2:45, Krishna advised Arjuna to become transcendental to the material activities impelled by the three material modes of nature. Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nishtraigunya Bhavarjuna. The purpose of Vedic study is to transcend the activities of the three modes of material nature. Of course, in the material world, the mode of goodness is accepted as best, and one can be promoted to the higher planetary systems by being on the Sattva Guna platform. However, that is not perfection. One must come to the conclusion that even the Sattva Guna platform is also not good. One may dream that he has become a king with a good family, wife and children, but immediately at the end of that dream, he comes to the conclusion that it is false. Similarly, all kinds of material happiness are understandable for a person who wants spiritual salvation. If a person does not come to the conclusion that he has nothing to do with any kind of material happiness, he cannot come to the platform of understanding the absolute truth, or tattva-gyan. Karmis, jnanis, and yogis are after some material elevation. The karmis work hard day and night for some bodily comfort, and the jnanis simply speculate about how to get out of the entanglement of karma and merge into the Brahman effulgence. The yogis are very much addicted to the acquisition of material perfection and magical powers. All of them are trying to be materially perfect, but a devotee very easily comes to the platform of nirguna in devotional service, and consequently, for the devotee, the results of karma, jnana, and yoga become very insignificant. Therefore, only the devotee is on the platform of tattva-gyan, not the others. Of course, the jnani's position is better than that of the karmi, but that position is also insufficient. The jnani must actually become liberated, and after liberation, he may be situated in devotional service. Mad bhaktim labhate padam. Text 4. As long as the mind of the living entity is contaminated by the three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, his mind is exactly like an independent, uncontrolled elephant. It simply expands its jurisdiction of pious and impious activities by using the senses. The result is that the living entity remains in the material world to enjoy and suffer pleasures and pains due to material activity. Purport. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that material pious and impious activities are both opposed to the principle of devotional service. Devotional service means mukti, freedom from material entanglement. But pious and impious activities result in entanglement within this material world. If the mind is captivated by the pious and impious activities mentioned in the Vedas, one remains eternally in darkness. One cannot attain the absolute platform. To change the consciousness from ignorance to passion, or from passion to goodness, does not really solve the problem. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 14:26, Sagunan samatijaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One must come to the transcendental platform. Otherwise, life's mission is never fulfilled. Text 5. Because the mind is absorbed in desires for pious and impious activities, it is naturally subjected to the transformations of lust and anger. In this way, it becomes attracted to material sense enjoyment. In other words, the mind is conducted by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. There are 11 senses and 5 material elements, and out of these 16 items, the mind is the chief. Therefore, the mind brings about birth in different types of bodies among demigods, human beings, animals, and birds. When the mind is situated in a higher or lower position, it accepts a higher or lower material body. Purport. Transmigration among the 8,400,000 species is due to the minds being polluted by certain material qualities. Due to the mind, the soul is subjected to pious and impious activities. The continuation of material existence is subjected to pious and the continuation of material existence is like the waves of material nature. In this regard, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Mayar vache yacha beshi kacha habudububai. My dear brother, the spirit soul is completely under the control of Maya, and you are being carried away by its waves. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma karta ham iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities which are in actuality carried out by nature. Material existence means being fully controlled by material nature. The mind is the center for accepting the dictations of material nature. In this way, the living entity is carried away in different types of bodies continuously, millennium after millennium. Krishna Muli ye jiva anadi bahirmukha atayeva maya tari deya sangsara dukkha. Due to the living entity's forgetfulness of Krishna, one is bound by the laws of material nature. Text 6. One more, and then we'll have our reflections. The materialistic mind, covering the living entity's soul, carries it to different species of life. This is called continued material existence. Due to the mind, the living entity suffers or enjoys material distress or happiness. Being thus illusioned, the mind further creates pious and impious activities and their karma, and thus the soul becomes conditioned. Purport. Mental activities under the influence of material nature cause happiness and distress within the material world. Being covered by illusion, the living entity eternally continues conditioned life under different designations. On the whole, the mind is the cause of conditioned life. Therefore, the entire yogic process is meant to control the mind and the senses. If the mind is controlled, the senses are automatically controlled, and therefore the soul is saved from the reactions of pious and impious activity. If the mind is engaged at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, Savai Manat Krishna Padada Bindayo, the senses are automatically engaged in the Lord's service. When the mind and senses are engaged in devotional service, the living entity naturally becomes Krishna conscious. As soon as one always thinks of Krishna, it becomes a perfect yogi, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Yoginam apisarvesham madgatenantaratmana. This antaratma, the mind, is conditioned by material nature. As stated here, Maya rachitantaratma sudahinam sangsruti chakrakutaha. The mind, being most powerful, covers the living entity and puts him in the waves of material existence. Hare Krishna. 7:30 exactly. So we'll stop here and move on to our 2, 3, 4, 6. Our reflection period. Anything that stuck in your mind when you're reading? Yes, you got the thing.
Thank you for reading.
My pleasure.
Okay. Today we read King Rahugana tried to engage Bharata in carrying the palanquin, which is a form of sense gratification for the king. However, if one is engaged as a palanquin carrier in the Lord's service, that is certainly beneficial. So, some of us, I know some people who find it difficult to do what they do because it's not, direct, quote unquote, direct devotional service, like in the temple as like they're all day, every day, or like something like that. So I have 2 questions. You always say that we should do whatever we do with the mentality that Krishna has appointed me to do this service. But in a case like this, and in the case of a lot of people, it said that Bharata was carrying the palanquin as a form of sense gratification for the king. And some people do some services that are sense gratifications to other people. So how to see that as something that
The
Krishna...
reason it says it was sense gratification, it was because it was the king. For the king, it was sense gratification. Jada Bharata had nothing to do with carrying the palanquin at all. He was completely aloof. There's a very nice verse here which describes that condition, which maybe sound far out for us on our present condition, but it's possible to attain this state of consciousness. This is in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and it goes like this. Sorry. Yeah. Naiva kinchit kanomiti yukto manyeta tatpavit pashan shrinvan sprishan jigran ashnan gachchan supan shwasan pralapan bisrijan grinan unmishan nimashanapi indriyan indriyarteshu vartanta itidarayan. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. So that's a yogic condition. But a devotee who is in the consciousness of doing what he's been appointed to do for Krishna, and then gives the fruits, or at least a part of the fruits, to Krishna, then he's in a different consciousness than one who does the same thing in a different consciousness. So the idea is the consciousness that one's in that makes us safe. Because everyone in the material world, as was described in this section, in the material world, everyone is controlled by the modes of material nature. There's certain things that even a liberated person has to do. They have to go to the bathroom. I mean, there are very special souls who don't, but that's certainly extremely rare. But most, even liberated souls have to, evacuate their waste, their impure poisons that need to be, go out of the body, otherwise they get sick and die. So, devotional service is not just an external affair, it's an internal state of existence. It's in a state of consciousness. It's love. It's when you're doing it out of love. Jada Bharata wasn't actually carrying the palanquin. He was doing something else in his mind. He was completely in a liberated condition. Very rare state of consciousness. So, I don't know what you meant exactly by there's people in the temple doing things for Krishna and not doing it for Krishna. I'm not sure what you meant about that. That was not quite clear what you intended to mean by that.
Some people spend their day cooking for the deities and doing service direct, and other people have to go to a regular job.
Oh, I see. So you're contrasting those people who are doing service directly to the deity in the temple and those who are doing their job. Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah, well, it may not be as direct, but if you are doing it in the consciousness that Krishna gave you the service and you're doing it for service, then that takes you to Krishna consciousness. You may have ways to go to be in perfect Krishna consciousness, but at least you'll be in Krishna consciousness if you think like that, even if you're working in a factory. And if you work in a factory and then give all of the results, which is very rare, because most people need something to live, then they're sannyasis, basically. They're complete renunciates. They're completely absorbed in devotional service. I happen to have a little bit of a personal experience because when I joined, my wife was pregnant, and I had to make some money to get the rent and the food on the table. So Jayananda, you may have heard of him, he's a great saintly person, I lived with Jayananda for a couple of years, so I was very blessed. He said, well, why don't you drive a taxi? Because that's what I did. So I said, okay. So I started to drive a taxi, and then I put a book on the seat, and then when the person got into the taxi, if they didn't want to sit down in the book, they'd have to pick it up and ask me, does this belong to somebody? And they would say, well, not exactly. And then I'd start talking to him about the book, and by the time we got to the airport, he had the book, I got the thing for the tip or whatever it was, and I used to pay for the book, and that was it. So I felt Krishna conscious all day, even though I was just driving a taxi, people from here to there to the airport and the hotel and this and that. And so I understood, I felt it myself. So I was on a walk with Prabhupada, and I asked Prabhupada, can I, because I understood, hey, I can do this book distribution. But first you have to edit the book, and then after that you can. So I said, Prabhupada, can I, maintain my griha by book distribution? And Prabhupada looked at me and said, yes, you can take 25% from the top. All right. Now, you didn't do that in front of Prabhupada. I didn't do that in front of Prabhupada. I wouldn't be. I mean, I know I'm a joke-a-logue, but I wouldn't do that. So then I started doing that, and I would just take 25. Of course, it wasn't very much at that time, but somehow or other we scraped together and make ends meet, and it was ecstasy. I felt the same as when I was in the taxi, driving the taxi around, only it was more fun, I guess you could say.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Somebody else? Yes, somebody had their hand up. Did you have your hand up? I think so. Our local saint, Sarva.
Not a big point, but Prabhupada so often gives examples from India like hogs and dogs, but he gives an example of someone driving a car and being in an accident and identifying or not identifying with the car. And
Yes.
one of the purports which we can relate to very much in the West.
Yes. Srila Prabhupada once explained what that means a little bit more explicitly. He said, if you were driving a car that you had worked hard your whole life to get, say for instance you were really attached to getting the best car you could get, like a Rolls Royce, or I don't know what it is nowadays. There's probably something better than that. Anyway, I'm a little out of the loop. I don't know what the best cars are. But say you wanted to get the best car and you worked hard your whole life and finally you got it. And you're driving it out of the showroom, and you're looking for the first friend like this, waiting for them to, and then a lorry comes and smashes into it before you got a chance to get your insurance. Anyway, that's hypothetical. And you'll be very upset because you identify so strongly with the car. And sometimes even if somebody hits the car, you'll yell out the window, "You hit me!"
What identification?
So, but then, if a person's driving the same car as a chauffeur for a very rich man, and the same thing happens, and the insurance taking care of it belongs to somebody else, doesn't belong to you, you don't identify it so strongly. There may be anxiety because maybe you'll get fired by the guy because you're driving the car, made a mistake, but it's not the same. So that's the idea of the identification. When the soul identifies very strongly with the body, then the pains and pleasures and the different things that happen are much more intensely felt. The pleasure is intensely felt, the pain is intensely felt, and one is just on a roller coaster and a merry-go-round at the same time. So yeah, it all has to do with how strongly we identify with the body, and that comes from knowledge, from assimilating transcendental knowledge. Until you can actually be in that consciousness all the time, remembering all the time who you are and what you're doing, then you become detached. Even when things are going your way or not going, things are not going your way, we have someone else that's, there you go. Camille, go ahead.
To continue, the attachment to this, to practice detachment is a very subtle thing, because we even, I believe at the very end in text 6, it was starting to describe the relationship between our soul and the mind, and that the mind is actually a confusing thing. And when I was reading it, I was thinking about it. We so strongly identify with the mind nowadays. We're on our cell phones, or we're watching TVs or movies, that we're really just associating life with images now, or just, ideas. We're no longer really attached to the body, is why we do yoga or devotional service, is why we get in touch with our soul. But we're not really doing anything to stimulate our intelligence anymore, and so we're confusing this with our soul. We no longer feel what is within us, and therefore is confusing it with our mind. And so I feel it is very interesting that they were trying to distinguish this subtle difference between the soul and the mind. You are born into this planet with your soul, but you truly do develop that mind through childhood and experiences. Is that correct? Am I understanding the difference between the mind as intelligence and the soul?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there's a question that was asked by Devahuti to her son Kapila, who happened to be God, incarnation of God. Nice son to have when you have to ask something. And she said, she made this very point. She said, I can understand that I'm not the body, it's fairly obvious. But to understand how the intelligence and consciousness are intermixed and entangled, she said, that's very beyond me. So what to do?
Let go. Worship and devote. It's true. This is what I'm
No, wait a second.
Humility.
Are you telling or asking?
Oh, I was agreeing. I'm on the train of thought.
Let me finish. I want to tell you what Kapila Dev says.
Please.
Before you go into that, because it's true. So Kapila Dev said, yes, it's very difficult. Therefore, you have to hear from the right source the truth for a very long time, seriously. And then gradually, by that is the process. You have to hear for a long time until you assimilate the knowledge. It's like if you want to learn something, say you're studying, I don't know, electronic engineering or anything. You're studying any, very complex, machinery or something. You don't just understand all at once. You understand it. Sometimes you have to take it apart, every single part, and put it back together and understand how it works. And at some point along the assimilation of that knowledge, you actually understand what it is, whereas you may not understand anything from the very beginning. So it's like that in devotional life, except it's more subtle. Yes, it is more difficult, and it can take a long time. It can also take a short time, depending on how evolved we are from a previous life. But yeah, if we can begin to talk to our mind when it's disturbing us, not just observe it. If you just observe it neutrally, you'll get swept away anyway. You have to actually,
Control.
you have to get on its case. Like sometimes like you're having a dream, and it may be a sensual dream, or it may be some kind of disturbing dream. I mean, I can honestly say that I'm to this point now. Whenever something like that starts to happen, I just yell at my mind. Okay, no, not again. Just like that, inside my mind. I don't yell it out like that, but inside my mind I do just that. And it just, poof, now it goes away immediately. And then, when you start chanting Hare Krishna japa seriously, I mean talking about serious, like every day, without fail, then you realize very quickly that you're not your mind. Because you want to chant Hare Krishna, and halfway through or part-time through, your mind starts going, and you're tired, what is this? Hare Krishna, it's all going on at the same time. But if you keep chanting, it's so powerful. This meditation is it's much more powerful than Astanga Yoga. much more powerful. Then you have to get to see yourself, the difference between you and your mind.
Imagine doing them together. Ashtanga yoga while doing the Maha Mantra. It's very hard to stay in chant while you're doing yoga.
Well, it's much easier. We don't want to take the difficult path. We want to do the easy path, because the bhakti yoga can be done all the time. You don't need to be in a posture. You don't need to be doing a certain, exercise or anything. Bhakti yoga can be done all the time, 24 hours a 7, whenever you're doing. That's why it's recommended. That's what bhakti yoga is. That's what bhakti yoga is. Therefore, it's recommended in this age, because of those things you're saying, because it's so contaminated, because of the cell phone and the Wi-Fi and the TV signals, and they're all going through our minds, everyone's. This is going on right now, and the Wi-Fi thing is going on everywhere, and it makes it impossible actually to perfect the Ashtanga Yoga, which is a real process. It's a real Vedic process. Yeah, but to achieve the perfection of yoga and to see Krishna face to face and to go back to the spiritual world in the Kali Yuga, it's not possible. You can improve the state of your mind, and you can become more peaceful, no doubt.
Through only Ashtanga?
No.
Through Bhakti?
No. Through Ashtanga, you can become, maybe a little healthier, and you can become a little bit more in goodness.
We do this all together, correct?
But you can't attract Krishna's attention in the Kali Yuga. You need at least 10,000 years.
See, I'm not trying to realize
of
in this
Ashtanga.
moment, but I'm in the process with all my friends here.
Well, you're in the right place at the right
I
time.
think we agree
At
now.
least that we can agree on that. Yeah, that we can agree on, definitely. But it's the Yoga Dharma, and Ashtanga Yoga. The meditative process was the Yoga Dharma in the Satya Yuga, and that's when it was recommended to do. But it's not recommended by any of Acharya. Any Acharya doesn't recommend the Ashtanga Yoga process in this age for perfection. Not that we don't do it for our health or do it for purpose, that kind of purpose, but for the spiritual realization, it's Bhakti Yoga, and it's the Maha Mantra. It's mantra meditation, which can actually control the mind and give us to attract Krishna's attention, and satatam kirtiyanto mam yatantascha dvida vritaha, and give us actual experience of Krishna, direct.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Yes, John.
Just a follow-up to Hannah's question about the sense gratification part, about the king's sense gratification.
Yeah.
At least in ancient times, I've read that the kings were considered as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or representative of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this case, do we understand that because Jada Bharat was above, is transcendental to all that, and Rahugana was not a pure devotee of the Lord, that's why it's explained that verse that it's sense gratification towards the king?
Yes.
For carrying.
Yes. Exactly.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Next. Okay, Carter, go ahead. You got the mic. Open mic.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. We read in text 5 a little bit about, it talked about the pious and impious activities are both opposed to the principle of devotional service. But what my question is how one must come to the transcendental platform to no longer be affected by those modes of material nature.
How?
How? What process or how can you elaborate on? How do I articulate this?
That's the same verse I just quoted. Satatam kirtiyan tesham satati yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam piyanti. The how is it has to be given to you by Krishna. Krishna actually has to select you. And and Krishna selects you when you perform devotional service for him in the way that he wants you to, in the way he likes it. Because he's actually he's the Lord. He's the controller, owner, and the friend. He's inside the heart, and he's watching everything. And so when you do something that pleases him, then he can give you realization immediately.
What can we do in practice during our daily life to make sure that we're always engaging? For example, I do Ashtanga yoga, but I also do meditation, I read, I do these things to stimulate my mind and try to put myself into a position.
Satatam kirtiyanto mam itantasya dvida vritaha. Satatam kirtiyanto mam itantasya dvida vritaha. Mahatmanas tumam partha daivim prakritim ashrita. To become transcendental, you have to become connected with the internal energy, the spiritual energy of Krishna, the internal energy. So Daivim Prakritim Ashrita means one who takes shelter of the internal energy is called Mahatma. Mahatmanas tumam partha Daivim Prakritim Ashrita. Bhajantyanana manaso Yatva Bhutadamaviyam. And then the next verse says how he does that. Satatam kirtiyanto mam itantasya dridavrtaha. He chants constantly Krishna's name, dridavrtaha, with determination.
I thought I heard kirtan in there, or something that sounded like kirtan.
Yes.
Kirtan is a great way, I feel, to liberate within. We're on the same page, Maharaja.
Exactly.
If you were, for example, doing something that you might not like, or in that moment you're confused and you're lost in the
You know what I told you the other day?
from
Do
within.
you remember what I told you,
You
Camille? Do you remember what I told you the other day
Hmm.
when we talked in my
I
room?
remember it.
What did I say?
Oh, can't remember which part you mean.
I mean, you're a teacher.
Ah, yes,
You're
yes.
you're a natural teacher. And when you come to a room full of people
I'm
and
just
somebody's
talking and discussing.
no, listen. Can we take a vote? Can we take a vote? You're a natural teacher, so you should be a teacher
Of yoga.
of bhakti yoga.
Ah, yes. I'm starting Bhakti Farms soon, hopefully. I'm in the process of talking.
Good. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. It's your nature. It's your nature, your teacher, so you kind of take over the conversation.
To teach myself.
See
And
what
now
I
I'm
mean?
here to be taught by teachers and my friends.
Okay. So satatam kirtiyanto mam yatantasya. You asked me how to do that during the day. You do that by chanting Hare Krishna all the time. And to the extent that you can do it all the time, that means you become completely transcendental. And if you can chant 24/7, then you leave this material world, even if you're in the material world physically. And things change. Everything changes. And that's it for me tonight, folks. Hare Krishna. I gotta go because I gotta get up real early and record the Chaitanya Charitamrita for Prabhupada. Do we have more things here?
No, I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, you wanted to make
This was a
sure.
long one.
Okay, thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you, Camille. We pray that you become a Bhakti Yoga teacher ASAP.
Something or another.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Well. All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. Tomorrow night is Wednesday, 6:30, same time, same place, same station. See you tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.